find the questions. I made a Google Doc. Hello and welcome to this week's video. If you're new here, hi, my name is Camille. I'm a foreigner, expat, immigrant, whatever you want to call me, living in South Korea, and I like to talk about it on the internet. And today I'm answering your FAQs about living and working in Korea, I guess. If you've never been to my channel before, just like there's a smidgen quick little background on me. I'm Canadian, which is important because it affects the types of visas that I can be on. So I'm Canadian. I've lived here for 3 years. I started as an English teacher at a kindergarten for about a year and a quarter. And then I got hired by a global public relations firm with an office in Seoul. And I worked as a senior editor and then was promoted to an account manager for just under a year. And now in 2022, 2023, I work as the head of global marketing at a K-beauty brand. So that's what makes me pseudo qualified to answer your FAQs, which are exactly what these are. So a little AMA, a little FAQ, totally unorganized, but about life and work in Korea. So let's get into it. The first question is, my friend wants to be an English teacher in South Korea, but the problem is they don't accept English teachers who come from non-native countries. We're both from Morocco, BT dubs. Does she have to go and apply directly to schools there? So this is a great question, and it's something that I think I've talked about before. I'll link a video if it exists. If not, basically in order to teach English here in Korea, you have to be on an E2 visa or an English teaching visa, and this visa has certain restrictions. So unfortunately, it's not that the schools don't want to work with your friend, it's about the government regulations. So there are potentially other ways to get hired as an English teacher, even if you're not from one of the 7 listed countries, which would be, it's been a while since I've listed these out, Canada, the United States, the UK, Ireland, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. If you're not from one of those 7 states, the only other way I think that you can really teach English here would be to come here on some other kind of visa, either live here for long enough that you're naturalized, I think is what it's called, or you move on to a permanent residency visa, so like an F-class visa. You can get married, you can get on an F-class visa, but in terms of an employment-specific visa, unfortunately, English teachers have to be on an E2, and the government restricts it to those 7 countries, at least for now. So maybe in the future, they'll open their mind to accepting English speakers from other parts of the world. There are plenty of native English speakers that don't reside in those countries, but for now, unfortunately, it is limited to those 7. I'm a content writer and event organizer myself, and I just studied PR online. Many jobs in South Korea fit my profile, but when I apply, I get rejections mostly. Do companies there sponsor foreigners, or do you have to go to South Korea to apply directly? So yes, of course, companies here do sponsor foreigners. That's how I'm employed. I'm on a work-sponsored visa, which means that I am allowed to work here for one specific company for a specific contracted amount of time, and were I ever to quit my job, I would have to leave. So that's what a work sponsorship means, and it is available to foreigners. There are a few different ways to get it, but it's generally what we call an E-class visa. So there's an E2 teaching visa, which I just spoke about, an E7, which is like more of a professional office sponsorship. There's also E6, which is where talent agents can sponsor actors, models, entertainers, a bunch of different employment sponsorship opportunities. And while you don't have to be in Korea to be eligible for this type of sponsorship when you first apply, I would be lying if I didn't tell you that it would make it a lot easier. Getting hired in an office when you're not in Korea is just going to be difficult because the market is so saturated with job applicants, not just foreigners, but Koreans as well. So it's very, very competitive to get these jobs, and you definitely would be at a disadvantage if you apply from outside South Korea, but it is not impossible. I promise you it's not impossible, it's just a little bit harder. Okay, question number 3. How did you find a job in Korea? This is a great question. I actually have a whole video on how I applied for my first PR job, and I will be creating an updated video that talks about how I got my job in K-beauty as well, so stay tuned for that. It's a little bit different. But to break down how I found my job, I'm going to talk about the two different types of jobs that I had. As I said at the top of the video, I was a teacher when I first arrived, and I found my teaching job on Dave's ESL Cafe, which is a really good resource for anyone who's looking to teach. There's tons and tons and tons and tons of Hagwons and recruiters that post on that board. I have a bunch of videos also about like how to find the right fit for Hagwon, what questions to ask, how to know, if it's a good one or a bad one, because they're not all great. I have a playlist called 1-800-Hagwon, which I'll also link up here for you, that can give you more information about how to find an English teaching job, what type of job might be good for you, kindergarten versus after school program versus elementary versus evenings, lots of options. So definitely take a look at that if you're interested in teaching English, but I found it on a job board. And the other two jobs that I've had, which were working as essentially a copywriter at a public relations firm and now working as the head of global marketing in K-Beauty, were both available in a couple of places. I know that they were both posted on LinkedIn. They were both on People and Job as well. And I think my current job was also listed on Saramin and Craigslist. Craigslist is a little bit sketchy, but basically, which we all knew, but basically I recently learned that my very real job with very real job openings also posts on Craigslist. So just something to keep in mind. Oh, this is a very interesting question. Did you take Korean lessons before going to Korea or only once you got to Korea? For those of you who don't know, I am not a proficient Korean speaker. I'm getting pretty good at having an ear for it though. I have lots of things to unpack around learning a second language. My entire family is bilingual except me, so I don't know why I thought Korean would come any easier, but I'm working on it. So when I was first interested in coming to Korea, I did start studying on my own. I got the Talk to Me in Korean books. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and then also I have a friend that I worked with back in Toronto who is Korean, and funny enough, she moved here about a year after I did. We still hang out here too. So she was actually tutoring me as well, so if I was in the office and I had a question about how to pronounce something or a grammar, a piece of grammar or whatever, a piece of grammar or something else, I could always swing by and ask her. So I did technically have a tutor as well, although it wasn't like a strict schedule. Once I moved here, I basically stopped studying, which might sound a little bit backwards, but is actually, I've found, quite a common thing that happens to people. First of all, you just moved to a new country. It's super overwhelming. You have so many other things to sort out. Korean kind of fell to the wayside, and then you convince yourself, you're like, oh, I'm surrounded by Koreans all day. Everything I do is in Korean. All the media, like, I turn on my TV, it's in Korean, etc., that you kind of will just absorb it. Turns out that might work for some people, but it didn't work for me. So after a few months, I got back on my book studying. Then I enrolled in KIP, which I've also made a video about, which I will put up here. And if you're not familiar with KIP, KIP is the Korean Integration and Immigration Program, or Immigration and Integration Program. I'm not sure which I comes first. But essentially, these are free language courses that are provided by the Korean government to help foreigners integrate and integrate into culture in Korea successfully or smoothly. Right now, I'm not studying very aggressively, I would say. I do get language lessons sponsored through my work. So we have a language program, which is a part of our benefits package. So all of the foreigners are encouraged to learn Korean if they don't speak it, which is basically me. Everybody else that's foreign that I work with speaks Korean. And then everyone else is welcome to learn another language on the platform. So they do have Korean, which is what I'm learning. There's English, there's Japanese, and I think Mandarin. So number 5, what are the pros and cons of your current job, and what is your dream job? So this is a great question. I think that my favorite thing about my job is that I really love skincare and I really love beauty, and it's always an industry that I've been interested in. I studied fashion in university, so this feels like a really natural fit, and so I love that every day I get to work in skincare and beauty. Like, it's just a really fun industry. And also the reality is that, like, Korean innovation in skincare and beauty is really at the forefront of what's going on in the industry. So it's really cool to be someone that's pushing the envelope on different, products that we're developing, about, the way we talk about our products, the way we want to build our community as a brand. there's so many things I want to tell you about, but I'm like not sure if I'm allowed to. And then I think the biggest con about my job, if I'm being real, like really real, is that it's in Incheon. I fully knew that when I applied. It's not like the office moved in the middle, but I think I really underestimated how difficult it would be to live in a suburb. Yeah. And the second half of that question was, what is your dream job? My dream job is to have no job. Like whenever I'm out with my friends and I'm talking about things that I'm working on, whether it is like helping out with a podcast or writing a blog or creating content like this, like everyone asks me how I'm alive because I do so many different things, and I just wish that I had 100% time to devote to those things. Next question, number 6, is it easy to eat vegetarian? I'm gonna say no, but I'm also gonna say not impossible. So if you come here as an English teacher where your lunches are usually provided by the school, it's gonna be a little bit difficult because usually they batch cook for everyone, and then they might not have the flexibility to provide you with a vegetarian alternative. But I do have friends here who are vegetarian, I have friends here who are vegan, and they are all alive. They manage to eat 3 square meals a day. So I think it's definitely easier if you're living in a metro city. So if you're living in Seoul, Busan, Daegu, then you're gonna have an easier time finding vegetarian, vegan options. Obviously, if you're in a more rural area, it might be more difficult. If you cook for yourself, being vegetarian shouldn't be an issue for you. If you are not a good cook like me and you like to, you know, explore the restaurants in your neighborhood, it might be a little bit more difficult if you don't live in a metro city, but definitely not impossible. My camera stopped recording there for a minute, but the last question is, what is something you would miss if you moved out of Seoul? Which I think this person may have meant, what would I miss if I moved out of South Korea? Because I did move out of Seoul and I miss absolutely everything about living in the city. But if I moved out of Korea, I mean, first and foremost, I would miss my friends. I think one of the things that's really, I don't think this is what you meant by the question, but I'm gonna have a heart-to-heart moment with you. One thing that's really difficult as a person who chooses to live abroad is, I mean, first of all, it's just hard to make friends, okay? Let's get that out of the way. It is more difficult to make friends as an adult living abroad. And then when you make those friends, they're also a lot more transient, and they come usually not only from the country you're living in, but also all over the world. So a bunch of my friends, I think I've already spoken about this in another video, a bunch of them moved home at the beginning of March, and the unfortunate reality is that their home is not my home. So it's not like if I choose to go back to Canada, I'll see them either. I already miss and would continue to miss a bunch of the friends that I've lived here, both people that live in Korea permanently, as well as, you know, other foreign friends who have moved back to wherever they come from. And then in terms of like a Korean thing that I would miss, because I think that's what you're talking about, because I've lived here for 3 years now, sometimes it's hard for me to distinguish things as uniquely Korean as they're just a part of my daily life now. I think it's hard for me to know what I would miss in terms of a Koreanism until I'm actually in Canada and I realize that this isn't the way that Canadians are, I guess. But let me just think about it for a minute. I think this is a little bit of a cop-out, but it's something that people say all the time. I feel like, you know, content creators are always saying this is it's something they miss about Korea, or one of their favorite things about Korea. But absolutely and for sure, it would be the convenience of living in Korea. Everything is just super, super convenient here. Ironically convenient until it's like really hard. Like for example, going to the doctor's really hard, but I can like book my appointment on my phone and it's blah, 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 blah. Like it's easy, and then, you know, you actually have to do something and it's difficult. But ordering food, ordering coffee, I don't know, like I have one app on my phone, like my Kakao Transit app, that like, you know, I can book a taxi, I can rent a bike, I think maybe book a flight. Like the fact that that's all in one app and it's all connected is, you know, something we just don't have in Canada. It's so easy to transfer money in this country. Everything's on Kakao, so great. yeah, like I want to send a present to someone, it's their birthday, it's so easy, boop, 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 send them like, you know, Chanel perfume. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, most convenient country. That's everything for this week's video, so I hope that if you asked one of those questions that you found the answer helpful. If you didn't get a chance to send me a question, feel free to leave it in the comments and I will tippy-top you a little reply. Yeah, my comment section is always open if you have any questions. You don't have to wait for another opportunity for one of these videos. Speaking of videos, there will probably be more soon because as I said a little while ago, it is so nice out now. It is sunny, it is bright, the sun stays out past 6:30, so I'm a completely different human being and I enjoy making content again. So stay tuned for more videos and I'll see you later. Bye!